Okay, hi. Welcome to Critical Q&A for number 471 on this 29th of September in the year of our Lord 2024. Welcome to the show. Hi. Let's answer some questions. Let's do some things. Let's talk cults. Let's talk coercive control. Let's talk stuff. Let's talk current events, whatever. I hope you all got a chance to check out. Let's flip over to the host and chat screen as well so we get y'all up on the screen. And let's go ahead and get the Q&A box up so y'all can start putting your questions in, please. As we do every week, please put your questions right here. And I'll answer them. Yes, my computer appears to be working just fine. And I also realized after somebody helpfully pointed out that some of the problem is that I get nervous and freak out a little bit too much when the settings are actually fine and I'm just making it worse. I noted that. I've seen it happen a couple times and I went, you're absolutely right. I need to be a little bit less nervous when I'm live. Okay, so, and I'll answer them. All right, so let's go ahead and get that Q&A started in here. So that box is now up. You all should see a place. Please put your questions right here and I'll answer them. Go ahead and put your questions there and I will start receiving them in my question box here. And in the meantime, I can see some of your chats here. I wanted to thank you, Ex-Witness, for your membership. I saw you signed up during our live, I think Friday, and I don't always see all the chats as we're going along here. So, but I do see them after the fact. I review my videos after I post them, make sure I didn't say anything needs to be cut right out. So far, it's worked out pretty well. But I want to thank all of you for your support and super chats and whatnot. Sam, thank you. You're very welcome for answering your question. Okay, so yeah, super chats always appreciated. And those, of course, will sit separate from the Q&A box. You can't do a super chat while doing in the Q&A box. So if you do want to ask me a question and super chat it, you can do that, and I should see it or notice that in the regular comments there. I'll try to open up that as well. Because I know y'all want to support me, and that's a good way to do it. Okay. I really, really wanted to plug the Friday show this week. We talked about Diddy. Holy cow. And I have only learned more, been watching a couple of videos and reading some news sources on him and what has been exposed and just how long and how well known this was in the industry, how many people knew about it, how many people were dishing on it for a very long time, and that how many lawsuits there were, civil lawsuits, that led up to this criminal prosecution is what it looks like. Man, what a story. What a story. I mean, I kind of jokingly said in the show that he was like the Black Jeffrey Epstein, and yet that wasn't, he is. I mean, to the blackmail, the extortion, the videos, all of it. Wow. Man, what a breaking story. What an incredible thing to be happening right in front of everybody for decades. Since the 90s, this guy was getting away with abusing and manipulating people in a coercive way, and right in plain sight, all the way back to some TV show. I get Make the Band or something. My wife was telling me about this because she watched it. I was in the Sea Org in Scientology. I didn't see anything about this guy. All I knew was, some dude named Puff Daddy was making music. He was just another rapper to me. It's just some guy in the hip hop community. I didn't, I was in the Sea Org. I had no knowledge about any of the cultural hip hop world or the icons or the music or any of that. I was completely divorced from all of that. So everything I know about that, I've learned since leaving the Sea Org. And man, has it been quite a journey learning the entire history of hip hop and rap and the East versus West and the various geographical areas. I watched all those documentaries. They were fascinating. So anyway, I hope you all will check out, though, because not too many people, the reason I want you to check out the show on Friday is because not too many people are actually approaching this story from the aspect of coercive control. They're talking about atrocities and sex, you know, this and that, and the freakouts and stuff, but they're not really talking about the repeating pattern of long-term coercive control that Diddy basically honed to a kind of science in his little inner world. So it's worth talking about. So anyway, hope you all will check that out. Now we've got a lot of questions coming in here, so let's go ahead and get to, let's go ahead and get to this. We got some great questions here. First off, to start us off with, Xion asks, what part do cults play in the Middle East crisis? Do you think we can help make things better? What a good question. Of course, the Middle East is a very broad place. It is a good-sized chunk of land with a number of different countries, cultures, tribes there. And a lot of different ideas about religion there. And so when you ask about cults, then yes, cults are absolutely a problem. Radicalized cults, people who are willing to do violence to enact their beliefs. To whether it's political, ideological terrorism, or whether it's religious extremism and radicalized behavior in the name of Muhammad or Christ or Buddha or whoever, there have been people in history who have been doing this kind of thing, who've been getting themselves a little too intensely committed to, you know, their belief set. And there have been no shortage of predatory, narcissistic, cult leader type people over the ages who have risen up as thought leaders within these different enclaves and gathered people around to them. And they're sort of the you have Muhammad, you have Jesus, you have Buddha, right? You have these major leaders, but you have all through the ages, you have these sub-leaders, these thought leaders who will write and speak on the words of the prophet or the dogma and the rules and the guidelines, and they have lots of different flavors. And I'm not even any kind of Islamic expert on this, but I've seen enough over the years, I've been exposed to enough of it to see very, very clearly that they have these thought leaders, and these guys, some of them can be a lot more extreme than others. Some can be quite moderate and go, hey, we're interpreting these things completely wrong. This is not violence and let's go kill all the apostates. But then other people are like, no, that's exactly what it says. It says if you're an apostate, you die, period, end of story, and we have to go hunt those people down and kill them. It's better to have never believed than to have been a believer who has fallen and lost their way when it comes to Islam, at least according to, again, certain interpretations. There's lots and lots of different interpretations, just like there are so many different interpretations of Christianity. So a reasonable question actually is the same question in the United States. You know, we have this Christian nationalist crisis here in the United States, right? Same kind of thing. Although, of course, you don't have people picking up guns at the Piggly Wiggly, right, to enforce their way. So I guess, you know, same in terms of belief structure. But anyway, getting back to the Middle East, it would be amazing if we could get a broad understanding in the Middle East about cults. I'm pretty sure, in fact, I know for a fact that there are academics and scholars and even religious thought leaders in the Middle East, in Middle Eastern countries, Iran, Iraq, I don't know about Afghanistan, actually, because the Taliban, what do we got? Qatar, you got Lebanon, Israel. Every one of these places does have moderates, but they don't always make the news, right? There are people who are over there working to bring peace. That's my point. There are people who can see what's going on, who can see that this is radicalized, extremist, terrorist level nonsense, and that people shouldn't be necessarily doing this to each other. They get shouted down and have to deal with all of the cultural, extremists just as much as as I and other academics here who try to maybe, I'm sorry, I don't mean to put myself into that academic world, but but there are academics who want moderation, who don't want Christian nationalism and extremism here. And I am amongst that group of people who are like, hey, can we bring the dial down a little bit? There are the same kind of people in the Middle East, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So if we had a larger, broader recognition of human rights and cult control and coercive control and the psychology of it in the Middle East, then yes, we would have, a more peaceful situation. Right, really generalized answer there, but yes, it would be a really, really, really good idea to find those voices. If you're really interested in helping over there, then find those voices, find those moderates, find those people who are trying to build bridges, not blow them up. Right, you'll find them; they're out there, and they deserve support. That's what that's what I'll say about it right now. Okay. Sam Slade, here's your question. Some religious studies scholars argue that the term cult is a pejorative that should not be used. Do you think they do cult survivors a disservice by using terms like NRM, New Religious Movement, instead? Yes, I do. Yes, I have definitely given them the sharp end of my tongue, these academics, these NRM scholars, as I call them. I'm not alone in this. There are many, many people in the ex-cult space, academics and survivors, who have a lot to say about this, because people in the academic world have blatantly stated in writing and in many, many talks and many, many conferences over the last 4 decades that, and for example, people like Gordon Melton, there's a name you can go look up or Google if you want. James R. Lewis is another one. Here are people who have stood on a podium and said that people like me, and they're talking directly about people like me, people who get on a microphone, people who write books, people who try to raise our voices and educate and inform and help. They call us apostates. This is why Scientology got the term. And they call us people with axes to grind and unreliable narrators whose voices and stories and testimonials and facts don't matter and shouldn't be listened to because our information is next to useless. They have said those exact things. And as you can see, I get a little riled up about that. Even now, even today, even after having described this problem for years, it still pisses me off. Because these are people who they lack compassion and they lack an understanding of the psychology of what this is all about. For the most part, and I've given these people a pass a few times because they tend to be sociologists or religious studies specialists, and they don't know anything about psychology. They literally know nothing about psychology. They know about religious studies and the history of religion. They know about sociology and sort of religious sociology. Right? How people practice their religion, how they get up, how they organize it, how they have ceremonies and rituals and rites and beliefs and dogma, and they have all these words and all these ideas for the different models of religion and how religion composes itself, conducts itself. How there are some who talk about the abusive side of this, but for the most part, they have these frameworks and models that are very sort of morality neutral, right? They're not there to judge. They're not there to criticize or be skeptical of the belief sets or the dogma. They're trying to, sort of explain the anatomy of it or the motivations behind it or the activities of it. And they study it and they research it and they talk about it ad nauseum like academics will do. And some of it's really interesting stuff when you start breaking down anatomy and methodology and stuff like that, or, do comparative analyses of different dogmas and things like that. It's very interesting stuff. So I'm not even saying that these are people whose careers are useless or that their information is always bad or wrong. It's this one thing that some of these guys really get hung up on, and it has to do with cults and the use of the word cult. They really, really hate that word. And they hate it because of all the negative, as you said, the pejoratives, right? The negative connotations to it. And their obfuscation of what the word itself even means, because they refuse to put a moral template or skeptical thinking into the picture when it comes to the practices of certain religious-oriented groups, i.e. Scientology. Or, and this is where it tends to go, it tends to be in the religious side, under, you know, as you mentioned, NRM, New Religious Movement. No one's ever going to call NXIVM or Landmark Forum or Amway an NRM, a New Religious Movement, because they're not religious. Yeah, they're all cults, but they're not religious. But when it comes to something like the Jehovah's Witnesses or Scientology, these scholars will label them as new religious movements because they don't want to call them cults. And it really is word policing. This is thought policing and word policing on the part of academics. They think by removing the word from the conversation, they somehow make this playing field level and good, and the new religious movements like Scientology will get a fair shake. And these are people who refuse, and I do mean refuse. I have talked with some of these people. They refuse to even consider that they are wrong. They refuse to consider that there is anything about their point of view about new religious movements that could be in error. These are incredibly arrogant people. That's one of the things that makes me so mad at them, is their arrogance and their conceit is off the charts. I'm telling you, it's infuriating trying to talk to them or even listen to them, because they treat us passive-aggressively, us cult survivors. They treat us as though we're little children to be patted on the head. Oh, isn't that cute? Oh, you poor, misbegotten, misguided, ignorant boob who was, you know, in this unfortunate situation that you had a bad experience. But that doesn't mean that Scientology is bad. You're the ignorant boob, right? You know, it's so, you know, I don't even want to hear about your bad experience. That's just you. This is how they talk down to us. And it's real, like I said, it's really gross. So yes, I do think that we are being disserviced by academia. As a body, academia is completely letting us down as cult survivors. There are very few exceptions. I've named them before. You guys know them, right? Stephen Kent, Hugh Urban. You know, we know that there are allies. There are absolutely people in academia who do get it. They tend to be ex-cult members who got into academia to get it, not the other way around. Very, very, very few academics who have not been terrorized or you know, brutalized by a cult actually even try to understand the experience. And yeah, it's really upsetting. It really is. So anyway, there you go. Ex-Mitness Vernon, hey man, do you know if Diddy do any Scientology services? I love your phrasing. I am not aware of Diddy ever being anywhere near a Church of Scientology. People have brought up connections that he has. Possibly, right? Possibly. Anything's possible, but I have no evidence, no stories, no testimonials, no nothing that tells me that Diddy had any connection to Scientology ever. So that's literally everything I can say about that part of it. Okay, red pill. Here comes the red pill medley. Here we go. Who would win in a fight between Klingons and Romulans? How many OTs did you know while in Scientology? How many OTs have you met since leaving? What do the OTs who left say about the material? Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, sorry, Leslie, no papers today. Okay, so let's see here. Who would win in a fight between Klingons and Romulans? Ooh. You can see my wheels turning here. I'm really thinking about this one. Klingons are brutal, right? Brutal. Originally modeled after, you know, the Cold War, the American-Russian conflict. But the Romulans are related to Klingons or to Vulcans, right? And so I kind of think that that gives them like the intellectual edge, the cleverness, right? The logic, the thinking, right? The Romulans tend to be a little more hardcore that way. So I'm going to say Romulans. I think advantage team Romulans. That's my off the cuff take there. How many OTs did you know while in Scientology? Oh gosh, hundreds. Personally, I met hundreds of OTs. Yeah. How many OTs have you met since leaving? Okay, let's see. One. I'm not going to sit here and count them all, but not many. 1, 2, 3, 4. 20? 25? Guessing? Yeah, 25, let's say. What do the OTs who left say about the material? Well, a lot of different things there, but not a lot. It's interesting, actually. I've talked with my parents quite a bit about the OT levels. I've spoken with some OT8s. Let's see. Had talks with Mary Kahn. Had talks with. I think I talked to Mike about it one time. Mike Rinder. Certain other people. I won't drop names. Talked to that guy, George White, who did OT8 originally way back in the day. Had a long talk with him about the OT levels. So yeah, quite a few people. And what they say interesting things. Some people have told me they don't even remember their OT levels, or they don't remember much about them. And that's something I've always found very interesting, in the same way that I find it interesting that I can't remember a lot of the auditing that I received. It's interesting. It just fades, just goes away, and it's just not there. It's a little weird, right? I haven't really... I think George was the one who has done the deepest dives and the hardest looks that I can remember about the OT levels, the philosophy of them, where did Hubbard come up with the ideas, stuff like that. I think he really, really did a number on them and spoke for quite some time about it in different interviews. He's the one that comes to mind for me as the one who had the most to say about it. A lot of people I've spoken with about the OT levels, they're very... I don't mean to say that they're like trying to be, what's the word? They're not trying to be difficult or trying to be coy or trying to be like, oh, I just don't, I'm just not going to say a lot about it. They just don't have a lot to say about it. Kind of interesting, I've even spoken with a few OTs about the fact that the processes and the routines of it are kind of narcissist inducing, right? They create attitudes of grandiosity and personal responsibility that far, far, far exceeds what somebody could ever be responsible for. And so therefore claim causation for things that they could never be cause over, right? From anything from the light switches changing, in traffic, to saving people's lives spiritually, like reaching out and digging cancer out of somebody's body or something. I mean, OTs have claimed to do this. And yet, not one OT I've ever talked to has ever explained to me how those OT level processes create or induce narcissism. I explain it to them. And I've always found that a little weird and interesting in ex-Scientologists, right? How uncurious they are about what was done to them. And I don't mean to, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush there, but in asking me about this, it kind of is making me think about the fact that very few ex-Scientology OTs really want to talk much about the OT levels, very few of them, it seems. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? I think it is. Anyway, I don't know what to say about that right now. It's just kind of food for thought, I guess. But that's been my experience with it. I don't mean to be broadly judgmental or insulting or anything. I'm just kind of saying that's been my experience. And I have reached out to a lot of OTs, So, yeah, All right, let's carry on. Excion, are destructive cults a forever inextricable part of life? Yes, they are. Yep, absolutely. Just like eating and sleeping. They're built into us to be that way. As long as human beings have egos, we're going to have cults. Because egos drive our needs, right? Our emotional needs. As long as we have emotional needs, let me put it that way, actually a bit more broad. As long as we have emotional needs, we will have cults, because emotional needs are unreasonable demands a lot of the time. They're not sensible, logical, right? Our emotional needs are not necessarily something that make a lot of sense all the time, but we operate on them anyway. It's just how we feel and what we want. And when we are in need, when we are traumatized, when we have destabilized, when we are in a place where we are unsure, uncertain, you know, rocky ground in our life, transition periods, change periods, divorces, getting fired, you know, especially with some trauma or some bad news, we kind of pull in the flippers, and life isn't good, and maybe it's not even worth living, and things aren't going great for us, and we are looking for help. We are social creatures, and we want help. And sometimes that help is given freely and honestly by our friends and family. Often that's the case, and people survive and get along, you know, with a little help from their friends. And sometimes the helping hand that comes out to assist a person is the hand of a predator, a narcissist, a bad person, somebody who means to do them harm, or at least take advantage of them as best they can for their own aggrandizement, power, control, influence, etc. So that's always going to be that way, because we're always going to have a certain percentage of our population that is narcissistic and predatory. And until we learn how to filter that percent and deal with that and figure that out for real, really all the way down to the bottom, until we figure that out, we're not solving cults. We're just not, right? That's the fact of it. They don't have to, again, they don't have to be religious, right? They can be in any field, any area, any group of people. If a codependent relationship can be established around a centralized dogma and a charismatic leader who is leading people in this codependent way, and he or she starts piling on physical abuse, psychological abuse, information control, all the things, right? Because that leader wants influence and power. There's a cult. There it is. Right? That's the anatomy of it, and it's all over the place. Happens all the time. All right. Cool. Oh, yeah. Get your questions. Make sure, if you can, you get your questions in the question box here. I see some chatter there about the L rundowns. I can talk about that a little bit, but let's carry on here with the make sure you get your questions in the question box. Okay, because that way I can throw them up on screen. All right. So let's see here. Sam Slade, another question. Recently, prominent fringe figures have asserted that HIV is not the cause of AIDS. For example, Brett Weinstein, RFK Jr. Why do you think HIV denialism is coming back into vogue now? Oh, God, these guys. Yeah, these nuts. I can't stand these guys. The answer that comes to my mind right now is because fads are cyclic, and because crazy people get a voice for a period of time. And by crazy, I do mean crazy. RFK Jr. is crazy. That whole situation, that family, that he specifically, he's nuts. Certifiable. Right. I'm not even trying to be insulting. I'm saying the man is insane and he belongs in an institution. That's what I'm saying. Brett Weinstein is not that far off either, to be honest with you. I mean, the man just thinks in loopy terms. So as far as why do I think it's coming back into vogue now? Because thought leaders like these guys, get a platform and get people to feel sorry for them, or get people to feel like they, are saying something sensible because it's anti-establishment or it's anti. Okay, let's talk about it this way. Anti, right? It's sexy to be anti-establishment. It's awesome. It's powerful. It's invigorating. It's awe-inspiring. It's euphoria-inducing to go against the grain and feel like you're somebody special because you're pushing back against what all the sheep are following. Here's all the sheep walking down the path, on their way to the slaughter, and I'm smarter than them because I'm not going with that flow, right? This is a tale as old as time, quite literally a tale as old as time. People, have a compulsion to, or an emotional need, you could say, to get along, to be social creatures. Haidt says, I think, what is it, 80%? We're 80% monkey or 90% monkey or ant or something, and 10% monkey, something like that, right? In other words, we're very, very socially aligned creatures. But we also, and I'm talking at the individual level now, right? I'm at a group level. It's fads and stuff like that. It comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. But at an individual level, there's a great deal of personal satisfaction and even, like I said, euphoria that can be induced by going against the grain. It feels amazing because you feel like you know something everybody else doesn't know. And it's intoxicating in the same way conspiracy theories, right, are, or sacred science, Scientology, right? Once you learn about engrams and the reactive mind, you feel like you got some special leg up on everybody else in the world. Oh, I know shit nobody else knows, right? And it's very, it makes you feel good. And people want to feel good. They don't necessarily care why they feel good, especially people who are not necessarily skeptical or critical thinkers. They just kind of go with whatever feels good. And misinformation and propaganda it can feel great because of that sacred science component, that feeling of specialness that it gives you, So I'll throw that out there as an answer today on this one, and there you go. Okay, Xion asks, can you remember a time when you trying to use a Scientology technique or principle didn't work and what you thought about it? Yeah, sure. Oh, thank you again for that other super chat, Sam. Really appreciate it. Okay, let me think about this, because absolutely, there were many, many, many times where things didn't work or it wasn't working the way I thought it should have. I was just thinking about... let's see. I was just thinking about some word clearing and false data stripping I was doing one time. Just was not... I remember one time what I thought about it. Okay. All right, I'll tell you two examples. The first one that comes to mind was a time when and these are not big, huge deals, okay, but just, they come to mind. So one time I was doing false data stripping. This is a procedure in Scientology, ironically, to remove false information from your thinking. It's a whole procedure. It's a whole process. I think I broke it down one time. Some video, but I never did a whole video dedicated to just false data stripping. I probably should have, because it's diabolical. Hubbard came up with it in 1979, 1980 time period. And it's this effort to get you to tell it's like, it looks like word clearing or auditing. You're sitting across from somebody and they're asking you questions, and the questions have to do with narrowing down things you've been confused about, or things you didn't think added up, or seemed contrary, or you couldn't apply it. You have these questions asking you, soliciting times when you felt confused, frustrated, or upset about not being able to get something done or apply some information. And then the question becomes, okay, well, now we're going to assume, because you felt this way, confused or conflicted or stuck, well, there must be some false information there. So the question becomes, well, what, have you been given any false data regarding this? Right? And it's like, oh, well, gee, let me look, right? And you can do this on the meter or off. And I did probably, I don't know, I probably delivered 500 hours of false data stripping over the years as a Scientologist. And there was one time when this guy just wasn't giving it up. He had this thing, and everybody was telling him it was false, and it didn't seem like it was false. And I wish I could remember what it was. It had something to do with a it was the COCLO, Vicky Shantz. I was doing false data stripping on her. I'm sorry. There's nothing harmful or awful or abusive here. I didn't name drop her. But she was, like a senior to me. And I was in the classroom one day doing false data stripping on her. And we came up with this thing, and we went round and round on it about 3 or 4 times, trying to find the false data, and nothing was coming up. And it's supposed to be that when you do the process, you come up with the false data, but she just wasn't coming up with it. And she was a senior, and there's an interesting dynamic. Let me tell you about this. This question's thought-provoking. A couple things here. There's an interesting dynamic that happens in Scientology when a very junior person, such as myself, low on the totem pole, is doing a technical process on a senior person, because you don't want to piss them off in the process. Whereas with another person who is maybe your equal on the ranking, or somebody who you're not afraid of, or is not somebody who can perhaps discipline you, you might be a bit more forceful with them in executing the process, right? Well, there's a false datum here. Let's find it. Come on, dig it up, right? You don't let yourself quite do that with the senior person, right? And I'm sure I'm going to hear comments about, oh, well, I was in Scientology and I was never like that. I always just, yeah, great. You're awesome, right? Well, the other people like me didn't quite do that. And so I would be a little afraid, right? I'd be a little bit like, oh God, I don't want to push too hard and really piss this person off, because I have to deal with them after this. And they're my senior, right? So, if I piss them off right now, who's to say this afternoon or tomorrow I'm not going to be scrubbing dishes for some completely, disrelated thing just because I piss them off, right? There's always this, in the Sea Org, that was very much something I would be thinking about. Anyway, getting back to this. So we went round and round a few times on the false data thing, and nothing came up. And we both literally just kind of looked at each other and went, okay, well, let's move on. And we just dropped it. And this was not technically what you were supposed to do, but this, that was an example of that. Another time, let me tell you about this one real fast, because it's kind of not my thing, but it was like a slap in the face when I heard about it. I was in Santa Barbara, and this is a guy who told me about this. I'm not going to tell you his name, but he's out of Scientology now. And he told me one time very blatantly, just here it is, right? When he would security check somebody, one time there was an instance where he was sec checking this Vietnam vet, and the guy had some crime that he had committed in Vietnam as a soldier, something horrible. And he was not going to tell this auditor, this sec checker, and he let him get away with it. The sec checker told me later. I'll call him Bill, right? His name was not Bill, but Bill told me, he was like straight up like, yeah, I just couldn't get it from him, and we ended the session, and that was that. And my jaw hit the floor. I was like, what? You let him get away with that? Like, what? And he was like, yeah, I couldn't get it from him. That was that, right? And I was fit to be tied. I couldn't believe that had ever happened in a sec check, because you just don't let that happen. Anyway, I don't know how interesting that is, but it was something that came to mind here. All right. Okay, let's carry on here. Now, I brought in a couple questions from the queue. A couple of y'all have emailed me some questions, so let me throw up one of those. Let's go to this page here. Emma sent me this, and she asks, basically, I was interested in Scientology, and so I ordered a workbook just to have a read of, and now I'm getting these weird spam emails. And she sent me copies, I didn't throw them up on the screen here, that just feel really random. They are one-liners, and I haven't responded to any of them. I'm not really interested in replying to them, and just bought the workbook because I was curious. I guess my question is, are these emails normal? Why aren't they saying more? Why are they just weird one-liners that almost seem to border on unfriendliness? Okay, and just to give you a little flavor of this, the questions were, and I'll explain in my answer, but one of the emails was like, so did you read your book yet? You know, much love, you know, blah, blah from Bridge Publications, right? There's just these one-liner questions. And it's a bit abrupt, right? There's no intro. There's no like, you know, how you doing? What's up? You know, it's just straight, here's this question, and off it goes. Well, the reason why that is that way, Emma, is because those Scientologists who are emailing you are following L. Ron Hubbard's script or directions for how to write letters. And emails, of course, are just the modern version of letters or correspondence. And Hubbard wrote a lot of policies and a lot of issues about letter writing and promotion and marketing of Scientology using letters. So when somebody arrives or somebody comes in and expresses interest in something, you send them standard mailers. You don't send them individual letters. But once somebody starts buying something from the church, and you ordered a workbook, so now you are a name and an address in Scientology's database. And that database is never, ever, ever let go of. The local, wherever you ordered a workbook from, it was probably Bridge Publications. So, because I noticed that's where you were getting emails from. So Bridge is a Sea Org organization that publishes books and promotes them and distributes them and that kind of thing. So you bought directly from them. They have their own contact database of people who have purchased from them, but they're not generally the same kind of organization as your local city level church, like the Church of Scientology of Denver here, or the Church of Scientology in New York, right? Your city level churches. Those also keep up their own database of people that they have sold services and books or materials to. So if you ever bought anything from Scientology anywhere, you're in a database. That database is shared. It goes up the lines of management of Scientology to a centralized international database. And they keep this thing up, and they have been doing skip tracing and address correction and calling and finding people for the last couple decades now. And I'm guessing that it's probably in better shape now than it was when I was there, where there were tons of duplicates and bad information and bad addresses and bad contact data. They've been chasing this stuff up and working this stuff for a long time. But the reason, okay, so that all being said, the reason you're getting these emails is because Hubbard policy states that you are to write letters to people who buy books or buy services regularly. And the way you write your questions or the way you write your letters is there's a file. Okay, let me tell you this other thing. There's a file folder with your name on it and all the correspondence that's ever been sent to you, and invoices, copies of all the invoices of everything you've ever bought, phone notes, if you ever called in and talked to somebody that kept notes, that goes in the file. This is called a central file. And this is your entry in the database, basically, is this file. And it's a real physical file. There's a physical file, and then there's a digital version of this. Both exist at the same time. So the staff of the Scientology churches are routinely going through the central files, pulling a collection of file folders, each one being an individual person who bought something, and they just take it, stick it on their desk, or in the case of here, they put it on their desk. They'll either write actual physical letters or type up emails, either one, and they pull the file, they open it up, and here's what Hubbard says to do. He says you flip through and you look through and you familiarize yourself with who this person is and what they've done, and you write them a letter with the first thing that occurs to you to ask. What are you curious about as the person looking over this file? What you go through it and you go, oh, what's your question? What is it that you want to know more about with this person? And that's how you write the letter. So that's why you have emails, these one-liner emails that are just nonsense, that don't really care about you or ask about you or do much with you, is because it's just a toss-off. This is how Hubbard says to do it. And eventually you're supposed to respond. After 10, 20, 30 emails or letters or whatever, you'll report back and you'll do your next service or whatever. This is the theory that Hubbard wrote all of his policies on regarding letter writing. I know, it's whack. But it's actually just from a different time. It's from a time when people did get real physical letters much more often. And that was how they corresponded. And it was hard to sit and write a letter. It wasn't just something that machines did a lot, right? Back in the day, I'm talking about back in the 1950s and the 1960s, before, you know, the mass mailings and bulk mail and bulk letters, and then the internet and spam and all of this got invented, right? It didn't used to be that way. And so Hubbard's policies are anachronistic. They're old. They're outdated. They don't really apply in the modern world, where people are inundated with communication constantly, to the point that they don't even look at it anymore. They get mailings, they just throw it away. We waste, tons, not even, pounds, just tons of paper, just wasted in mass mailings. Well, Scientology is a big contributor to that now. But anyway, this letter writing thing was back in the day. This was actually a little bit more workable, is what I'm trying to say. It actually was more effective back in the 50s and 60s. Now it's just, whatever. So a whole lot of detail there for a very simple question. I hope that gives you some idea of why you're getting these dumbass emails from Bridge and Emma. And of course, you can always just ask them to stop writing you. Please stop writing me. Get me off your list. I don't want any more of this. And if they refuse, or you keep getting communications from them, you can tell them that you're going to contact a lawyer. And that is supposed to, again, per policy, they are supposed to take your name off the list at that point. Or you could just start telling them, you could just start asking them tough questions in return, right? Where's Shelly? Who's Xenu? Xenu? What are you guys still being abused every day? You could start throwing questions like that at them, and they'll stop writing to you pretty quickly. All right, let's carry on here. Go back to our chat screen. Okay. Let's see what we got here. All right. Xion asks, did you notice in the news that Scientology wants to buy singer Adele's home near St. Hill Manor? News to me? Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Nope, didn't know that. I wonder why. Wonder what they're doing. That's what I'm curious about. Why? Why do they want the house? I'll have to see where it is and see what's up with that. Obviously, I guess they're just trying to expand the property for some reason. I wonder why. Huh. Okay. Ex-Cyan. I saw the article that Tony Ortega did about Isaac Hayes in South Park, and that Mike Rinder talked about it recently too. Did you already comment about it? Yeah, we talked about it in the Straight Up and Vertical last week. I don't really, I didn't have a lot to say about it, but yeah, we talked about it there in last week's show. So let me see if Yeah, because what I brought up was the fact that I had heard from someone a few years ago that Isaac Hayes had quit in protest, that he did that, not in protest, but that he protested quitting, that he didn't want to quit, but Scientology had kind of strong-armed him into it. That's still a possible reality within the knowledge that Tony and Mike reported on, right? I mean, it could have been the case that Isaac didn't want to at first, but towed the line because the church told him to. Or it could be the case that I was given bum information and Isaac was more than happy to quit right off. I don't know which version is true, but that was the only thing I really had to contribute to it. Either way, it was clear that he did go along with the church and their directions, right? That much was obviously clear. All right. Yes. Oh, Charlotte, comments here in the chat here. I always thought the one-line letters were also because it was a stat for Sea Org members. Doesn't have to be a quality letter to get the stat. You are absolutely right, Charlotte, and thank you for mentioning that, because I was going to mention it too and I forgot. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be a nice, long, involved letter, and it's way easier for them to just give those toss-off things. They're not really trying to, when they're studying the Central Files folder, they're not really that invested, and so they kind of, okay, you bought a book, good, out we go, and that's that. So it works. It works for that, for the stat thing too. Yeah. I don't know anything about that, Ms. Tara Green, so I'm going to skip that question because I just can't answer it at all. But it's a good question, and I'd like to know more about that. But I'm going to move on here. Stuart Gorman is asking me a very interesting question. If more people believed that thoughts are physical objects, would it be easier to explain coercive control? Could that be a good premise for a legal definition? No. No, I don't think people are going to relate to that. People don't relate to thinking very well. They don't think about thinking much. They don't really talk about it much. They don't think. It's not something that is popular. Is going to be something that people gravitate to or want to understand or that they're going to immediately grasp. It's kind of like talking about statistics. It's like people kind of think they get it, but they don't really, and they don't really think very hard about it. And I don't mean to put everybody down, but it's kind of true. I mean, look at critical thinking, right? Nobody watches anything about critical thinking because they all think that they're fine and everybody else is the problem. And I'm not even kidding. People have way overestimated their ability to think. People think they are championship logic masters and debaters and critical thinkers. And they couldn't even tell you 3 or 4 logical fallacies out of this deck of fallacies, right? They don't. So it's not something that is something that people recognize they need help with or need help understanding, right? Abuse and coercion and violence and threats of violence, now those are things that attract attention and attract interest, curiosity, right? And so those are the ways to discuss what coercive control is and how to describe it within my experience. If I start talking about thinking and neurons and thought and that sort of thing, I don't think I'm going to get anywhere. Every time I've put stuff up about that kind of thing, it doesn't even break 1,000 views. But I start putting out, torture stories about people being abused, and it's, thousands of views, right? So what are people drawn to? What are they willing to listen to or hear? Not thinking, that's for sure. At least not in my experience. I haven't found that to be true, and I am, perhaps. Some of my attitude here is a little bit of jadedness, right? Because of that. So carry on. No. Ex-witness Vernon says, if Trump wins, do you think Europe will lose the U.S. as an ally? No, I don't think that is going to be the case. The real world is very different from the media binaries and nonsense that's presented to us. And the number of connections, if you were to sort of look at, how do I put this? We are far, far, far too connected and reliant and obligated to be connected to European countries, many of them, Germany. I'll throw UK in here, right? Just because it's on that side of the pond. Italy, France, Austria. I mean, all of them. I can't think of one actually that we're not so tightly connected with that the idea of severing ties with any of them is so ludicrous. And the European Union and NATO and the United Nations, the idea that all of that would just go away because of Trump is kind of impossible, because there's just too much there. There's too much money and influence and power and need. Straight up need. I mean, we don't trade for no reason, right? I mean, the connections we have with Europe are necessary and important and go far beyond Donald Trump's ego. So no, we're not going to lose the Europe as an ally. What Trump does is puts our nation in the worst possible position on the global stage, because Trump is not representative of the United States. He's only representative of himself. He doesn't care about anything but himself. And Trump supporters refuse to see this. It doesn't matter to me. It's the same thing as Scientologists thinking I'm full of shit because I talk about David Miscavige. I just don't even care, right? The truth is the truth. And Donald Trump is a malignant narcissist. And so he is the worst possible representative of this country. I mean, the only person I can think of as worse would be like J.D. Vance, right? I mean, like really scum-sucking, horrible, awful people, just human beings that just don't even like relate at all to the rest of humanity. Like they're just so far removed from real life. And that's the problem with him, and why, on a global stage, it's so difficult for him to be our representative or our decision maker. Right? It's as bad as he is domestically, internationally, he's 100 times worse, because he creates that, not just a bad impression, but he imposes our power on other countries in an authoritative, coercive way. He's a coercive controller. I mean, Trump is a manipulator. He's an abuser. He doesn't know how else to be. So his understanding of situations is a mob boss's understanding. What's it going to do for me? What do I have to do to you in order to get you to do what I want you to do. This is how Trump thinks about deals and getting along with people, and he brings that to the international stage. And this is not, countries have interests, not friends. This is understood, right? It's not like we're all big, pals. I'm not suggesting that Trump needs to be a personable person in order to be good at foreign relations. I'm saying his whole attitude and approach is off. Anyway, so no, as bad as all that is, and it's bad, the allyship that has survived for, hundreds of years between this country and those will survive this. Trump was not going to destroy all of that. That all being said, right? I don't want to find out. Vote accordingly, please. Okay. Excion, do people recognize you when you go out? Are you okay with that? Not in a long time. Not in a while. Have I been recognized? But it has happened, and it always kind of warms my heart and makes me feel a little giddy inside. I get my little celebrity moment. It's fun. It's happened, a handful of times over the years, and it's always fun. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Gary. Hey, man, haven't seen you in a while. Hey, thanks for that super chat. Okay, let's carry on here. Yeah, Bud 123, I think you're probably right that Bush and Cheney were worse on the international stage. I think you're absolutely right. And I'm going to say for the exact same reasons as I just laid out, actually. Except Cheney was a little more savvy about his use of power and control and influence, but just as bad a person. I mean, for sure. Okay. Different, but just as bad. All right, let's carry on. Excion, have you seen the graphic novel called Occulted about growing up in a cult influenced by Star Trek, written by Amy Rose and Ryan Estrada? No, I think I've heard about this, but I haven't seen it. No. So I'll have to check that out. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, we are 1 hour in at this point. How's it going? Looks pretty good. Let's carry on. Yeah. Great. All right, let's carry on here. We're asking some good questions. I hope I'm giving some decent answers. Okay. Oh, Michael Yoder has a medley of questions for me. Awesome. Hey, Michael. Okay. First, Alla Red Pill. That's right. Do you think the Church of Scientology still does the Est Repair rundown with landmark people, or is that gone by the wayside? Eurythmics or the Police? Favorite ethnic food and favorite musical? Okay, here we go with the medleys. So first off, a great question about the Est rundown. I have no reason to believe that they are not still doing that. The Church of Scientology put together a special action to be done with an e-meter in an auditing session, paid for as auditing, to fix a person who shows up into Scientology who has had previous experience with Est, Landmark, or Forum. If you've had anything to do with Werner Erhard stuff, Scientology feels that they need to fix you before they can give you actual Scientology. This is called the Est Rundown. And it is a list of questions that are assessed on an e-meter and taken up and handled in session. And if you've watched my e-meter video, then you'll know what I'm talking about when I just said all that. And if you haven't watched my e-meter video, you should, because I explain and show you how auditing actually works using the e-meter. And the e-meter is a very, very important tool in Scientology auditing. It's used to see whether a question is charged or not, whether it's something that should be taken up or not. And so there's this multi-page list of questions that are assessed on the e-meter having to do with Est and Landmark and its practices. I only remember one of them, something about finding it. You know, there's this thing in Est about getting it. whatever that is. And this is one of the questions that's asked in the correction list is, you know, did you fail to get it, or did you struggle to get it, or something like that. That's the only one that stood out to me in my memory right now. But I don't have any reason to believe they don't still do that. Eurythmics or the police? That is a tough question, but I am going to go with the police, simply based on my personal preferences and number of hits that I'm familiar with. Although, please know that I love the Eurythmics. I think Annie Lennox is a brilliant singer. If y'all remember or know her from, if you're old enough to know these people. The Eurythmics were awesome, right? Awesome, awesome. Okay, favorite ethnic food or ethnic food, I think you're asking me. Mexican food. I love Mexican food. Favorite musical? Don't really, oh boy, I'm going to think about this one. Musicals are not at the top of my list of entertainment media that I love, but the one that comes to mind right now is Grease. So I'll throw that one out there. Yeah, the John Travolta one. That's right, that one. I remember as a kid, we went and saw that a few times. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. So I'll throw that one out there. Let's carry on. Impending Doom Guy. Ooh, like that name. Where do Scientologists see themselves in relation to quote unquote God? Is God supposed to be some kind of Thetan too? Do Scientologists aim to subvert the commonly held perception of God or gods? Okay, great question. Sound of music. Okay, thanks, Leslie. Okay, where do Scientologists see themselves in relation to God? These are great questions. First off, I'll answer your last question first. Yes, Scientologists absolutely do seek to subvert the commonly held perception of God, because the dogma of Scientology is crystal clear here, guys. This is not a uncertain issue in Scientology. You and me and thee, we're the ones responsible personally and directly for all of this world. I you know, for my audio listeners, right? Like the world, everything around you. You're creating it actively, mechanically, subconsciously, but actively. You as a Thetan are making all of this happen. Collectively, we all are. That's the role of God in Christianity or Islam or Judaism, right? God's the creator, not in Scientology. In Scientology, we are. There is no origin story in Scientology that I ever found or read for where Thetans come from. We have always existed as far as Scientology is concerned. 4 quadrillion years ago is the earliest date of the earliest incident that L. Ron Hubbard puts a date to. That date is the entry of Thetans into this universe. He doesn't say that's the point when Thetans created this universe. He says this is the entry into this universe. This is incident 1 of OT3. The Xenu story is incident 2. So incident 1 is this 4 quadrillion years ago, we are welcomed into this universe as individually with a cherub and a lightning strike and these different symbols and images and stuff that Hubbard associates with that incident. And that's as early and as basic as it gets in Scientology from what I read or saw. Maybe there's something I didn't read or see, and there certainly is plenty in Scientology that I didn't read or see. But my experience, that's what I know. So that all being said, there is no God necessary in the Scientology dogma for this universe's history and our activity in it. God's not necessary for any of this. We're God. We're the ones playing that role, according to L. Ron Hubbard. Ultimately speaking, though, L. Ron Hubbard did say something kind of interesting about God. He never said there is no God. He said that the Christian God is a myth. He didn't say God is a myth. And he also said that when you are personally cleared on all of the dynamics, 1 through 7, you've reached the state of clear, you no longer have your own reactive mind, and you've gone up the OT levels to full OT, where you no longer have any trauma or body thetans or reactive minds or anything else affecting you. You've been cleared on all of your dynamics. Only then, he says, will you understand the 8th dynamic, God or infinity, in its entirety. He says up until you get to that point, you're not going to really be able to grasp the nature of the 8th dynamic. And in Scientology, this term, the 8th dynamic, is the term for God or infinity or, the allness of all synonymous. I hope that makes sense, because I'm kind of just like flying through that answer, but that's the deal. So Scientologists don't really think about God a whole lot. Maybe prior to 4 quadrillion years ago, and incident 1, there is some creation moment for us Thetans. If so, Hubbard never talked about it. So there you go. Xion, can you think of some episodes where cults were part of the Star Trek series? Plato's stepchildren, for example. Oh, is that the one I'm thinking about? Let me see if it is. Pretty sure. Is that one of the last episodes? 10th episode of the 3rd season. Oh, this is the oh, okay. Plato's stepchildren is not the one I was thinking about with the space hippies, right? With the guy with the big ears and the flower children from space. That was very culty. I'll look up the title of that one in a second. But this one you're suggesting here is the one where there was the first multiracial kiss between Kirk and Uhura, right? Between Shatner and Nichelle Nichols. Yeah, that was that episode. Okay, so it was one of the several episodes not screened by the BBC because of the unpleasant content of torture and sadism, because in this episode, the Enterprise encountered an ageless and sadistic race of humanoids with the power of telekinesis. Right. Okay. Okay, well, the one that came to mind for me was that other one with the flower children. So, Star Trek, which one was that one? This was 23rd, Way to Eden. That was it. The Way to Eden. Dr. Severin, the insane leader of the group, and this group of people who were sort of like I said, space hippies. They were like flower power and stuff. The Enterprise receives a distress call from the group, who's stranded on a planet, part of a movement called the Artists. That was the name of their cult, the Artists. And the Enterprise beams the group aboard, and they take the Enterprise to Eden, which is located in Romulan space. So yeah, so the Enterprise got kind of hijacked there, and off they went with the flower cult. And then they ended up going down to the planet and dying, eating the fruit that was supposed to, be wonderful and great for them. Ended up, in this paradise that they were supposed to be in, and they ended up dying at the end. So in a way, it was a story about an apocalyptic cult that took over the Enterprise for a little while, right? Yeah, those are the ones I can... That's the first one that came to mind for me. So that's the one I actually thought you were asking me about with Plato's stepchildren. But yeah, there were a few times that there was some culty stuff going on in Star Trek. Some of the writing for the original series was really bad. And some of the writing for the original series was fucking genius. Really, really good, powerful, emotionally captivating and really entertaining stuff. Just since we're on it, and I want to throw this out there, it was, let me get the title again, because my favorite Star Trek original series episode was the one with Joan Collins, time travel. Edith Keeler, yeah, City on the Edge of Forever. That was a good one. Okay. Ex-witness Vernon asks, is Mayor Karen Bass still distancing herself from Scientology after what happened at the closing of the Olympics? I don't know. Probably. I mean, she got strong-armed into, having to be kind to Cruz on in an international stage with the flag handing thing, right? With his Olympic stunt. Don't even for a microsecond think Tom Cruise was not relishing that moment. Absolutely was. Oh yeah, definitely was. Is she still distancing herself? Yeah, I'm sure she is. I haven't heard anything otherwise. Absolutely. OBG Foster asks, scientists have found microplastics in the human body. Do you think Scientology would sell the Purif as a cure for that? I am sure they already have. Scientologists are absolutely shameless and completely ignorant when it comes to biochemistry and how the body works. They really don't get any part of it. L. Ron Hubbard was Trumpian in his deluge of misinformation about the human body. He literally understood almost nothing about it, and therefore Scientologists understand almost nothing about it. I honestly have really struggled to understand how medical doctors can be Scientologists, given how Hubbard trashes medicine the way that he does. I really am. It's a real testament to cognitive dissonance and our ability to hold mutually exclusive data in our head that any medical doctor can even begin to take any of Scientology seriously, given what L. Ron Hubbard spews that is just so grossly wrong about medicine and the body. So that all being said, Scientologists have no idea how this microplastics thing works. They don't know anything about it. All they had to do was read a headline, microplastics found in the human body. There's another selling point for the Purif. You need to do the Purif because look at this article. Look what they are finding now. The Purification Rundown is the only program in the entire world that is going to fix this for you. That's how they will sell it, and I am positive that they have already done so. Absolutely. Great question. It's bad, man. I'm telling you, every time you think, every time you think you hit bottom, every time you think there's something, that there's some line they won't cross, they'll totally cross it. All right, let me flip over to the other question I had for our preset questions. And I had another question come in from the email that I wanted to throw out to you guys. Dustin Carlson asks, are there any teachings from L. Ron Hubbard or aspects of Scientology in general that are genuinely beneficial? Are there any Scientology practices that you still follow in your day-to-day life since leaving the church? All right, so this one comes around every few months, and I answer it every few months because it's just kind of one of those things that we need to talk about. You will find probably 3 or 4 versions of this on my Critical Clips channel, by the way. Let me pimp that real fast, because if y'all don't know about my Critical Clips channel, Monday through Friday, I post an answer to a question that I've been asked or clip discussing some single topic. I post those regularly on my other YouTube channel called Critical Clips. I have passed, I think, 1,300 clips, individual video clips, most of them less than 10 minutes long, by the way, answering these questions. And I have answered this one many, many times, but I'm going to answer it again because I know this is a cyclic thing. And also my answers do change a little bit over time. So here we go. This answer isn't going to change. No, there isn't anything particularly beneficial in Scientology, but there are a lot of things in Scientology with the apparency of benefit. There's a lot of things that appear to be beneficial. There are certain common sense principles regarding, time management or, avoiding people who are giving you a bad time, stuff like that. There's some common sense stuff in their beginning level, low level, Division 6 introductory services. That's what hooks people in. And so that stuff tends to be fairly common sense solutions to everyday problems. Relationship advice. Hey, guess what? Talk to your wife. Talk to your kids. Talk to your husband. I mean, this is not groundbreaking stuff. Basically, there's a whole course in Scientology for repairing a marriage or fixing a marriage or preparing for a marriage. And the key piece of information throughout all three of those courses is talk to your fucking spouse. I mean, so is that workable? Is that beneficial? Of course it is. Is it unique to Scientology? No. It's common sense. So how do I answer that question? Yeah, there's beneficial stuff in Scientology, but it's not unique to Scientology. Okay, so that point being made, are there any practices that I still follow in my day-to-day life? No, not at all. I have fully recovered from Scientology, which means I ain't doing or thinking with or having anything to do with any part of it. I now feel completely outside of Scientology, and what I see is an abusive, coercive practice that is purposefully put together as a framework of control. The problem with Scientology is not necessarily any individual service or activity. It is the collective whole that creates a compliance culture, a confession culture, and a coercive culture, one in which you must comply with the demands of the group in order to not only get along with the group and move up its ranks, but to not be abused in your life. And in complying with the group, there's going to be abuse anyway, because they're going to financially abuse you, if nothing else. Even if no one ever hits you, even if no one ever yells and screams at you, and even if no one ever locks you in a room, and the chances of none of those things happening in Scientology is very slim. But let's say none of those things happen to you, you are still being taken for a financial ride to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment. If you want to make it up to the top, that's how much you're going to pay. And there is zero chance, if I'm really being honest, that you're going to make it to the top without physical abuse, psychological abuse, emotional torment, and an awful lot of moral compromise. An awful lot. So, no, there's nothing in Scientology that I'm still holding on to or thinking is great. That is not a position that is shared by all ex-Scientologists. And I know that my position is seen by some as extreme. I don't think I'm an extremist in any way. I think I'm somebody who has rejected extremism in every way. And that's what Scientology is. It's an extremist dogma. So if you were to ask somebody who was a radicalized terrorist, well, was there anything good in your experience? That's kind of how I feel when people ask me this question at this point, is like, no, what? You know what I mean? That's kind of my attitude about it now. But you will find other ex-Scientologists who will give you very, very different answers. So that's my take on things. And of course, yes, I do believe I have the truth of it. But so do they. So whatever, right? Very subjective when it comes to that. OBJ. Okay, let's go back to the main screen here. There we go. And I think I have this question pulled up already. Let's see if we've got it. There we go. OBG Foster asks, Donald Trump says most people don't know what a phone app is. Do you? I think I know what a phone app is, because I think those are phone apps, right? Right? Did I do good? Are these apps? All right. Stop being silly. Eric Honecker. Okay, again, I'm not sure on this one. P. Diddy might not have been involved with Scientology, but was he involved with extreme forms of Christianity or Islam? I'm going to say right now, I don't know. I was under the impression that he had Christian leanings just from some of the lyrics to some of his songs, but I don't know for sure on that one. So I'll have to find out, let you know as more comes out on this. I'm pretty sure there's going to be future content about Diddy on this channel. I'm pretty sure I'm going to revisit that. And when I do, I will do a deeper dive. What we only covered on Friday was the indictment that I literally still have sitting here on my desk. Here's your papers, Leslie. Still got them. So that's what we covered, was really the criminal coercive stuff. I will find out more about this guy. There are already documentaries and news features and stuff on this, but I'm going to tell you that my prediction right now is not one of them is going to get it right when it comes to the repeating pattern of coercive control. I'm going to be curious to see how the media does with this, because so far I haven't been impressed. They have been digging deep into all the salacious stuff, of course, the freak-offs and everything else, but I haven't seen anybody really take the broad overview of coercive control. And we'll see. We'll see what happens as this rolls out. Yeah, apparently it did. X-Cyan asked, did Hurricane Helene affect Clearwater? I'm under the impression that there were areas at Flag that were knee-deep in water, and there was a lot of cleanup happening. I saw some photos posted by volunteer ministers doing cleanup activities. Just saw that on the Discord, really. You know, I mean, I haven't been diving into the Scientology sites, but that's what I'm aware of with that. So I don't think it didn't blow Flag down or anything like that. I don't think it even very heavily disrupted services there, but we'll see what news comes out over the next, week or two. Impending Doom Guy. I love your name. Chris, does Scientology hold the burning of anything sacred? No. Any practices or rituals with it? Do they value smoke or fire? Wow, good, interesting questions. Okay, here's what I've got for you on this. I'm digging a little deep. This is a staff thing, and it's not ritual. It is a little ritualistic, actually. Okay, here's what I've got for you. It's not burning. There's no burning rituals in Scientology that I'm aware of. There's no cleansing by fire or something like that. But what they do have, what comes to mind, is actually the ripping of papers, sort of the rending of things. There's a practice, a ritual in Scientology that has to do with reasons why something can't get done. There was a Miscavige actually directed this to be done in a program target back in 1998. And prior to that, I had seen this done in Scientology a few times before. Maybe this is done in other places too. In fact, I remember being surprised to hear that something very like this was done in another group. This was the practice of taking a piece of paper and writing down all your reasons or considerations or ideas as to why you couldn't get a thing done. Specifically in 1998, the target was take a piece of paper. All the staff needed to do this, or certain staff were named to do this, who were responsible for recruiting and training auditors for the orgs. Every org is supposed to have 20 auditors on post. And if you have 20 auditors on post, you can produce 1,000 hours of auditing every week, theoretically. So, is it 1,000? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, theoretically you could do it. Okay, so getting auditors is hard. You have to procure a person, recruit them for staff, put them through the training. It's months of training. At this point, it's years of training because of Miscavige. And then they come back and start auditing. It's a lot. It's a lot. Trust me, it's a lot to get that. And to get it 20 times, fucking really hard, right? It's a big deal. The staff were told by Miscavige, take a piece of paper, write down all the reasons you can't get those auditors. We don't have enough people, it's not enough time, blah, 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 blah. Write it all down. Collectively, all the staff were supposed to do this at a meeting, gather all of this up, take these papers and rip them into little tiny eensy-weensy shreds and throw them in a trash can. And so much for all your reasons why you can't get 20 auditors. They're all in the trash. Go get your 20 auditors, right? Take all those reasons, throw them in the trash. They never existed. They don't exist. They're just your stupid ideas. And now they're so much ripped up paper. It's a repeating thing. I've seen staff and, I've seen staff and Sea Org do that multiple times, ritualistically. Not weekly, not that regularly, right? But it'd come around. Closest thing I got for you to burning stuff up. So, there you go. Ooh, we got some more questions here. And it's coming up on 2:30, so we are going to go into flash answers mode now. I'm going to try to bang through a bunch of these, and let's see where we get. I'm going to give myself about 10 minutes here, and then I'm going to hit the exit switch because I got to get prepped for my show with Tony that I record at 3 o'clock. So here we go. Does Scientology benefit more if Trump wins? Will they feel more protected as a religion with Trump as president? Asks ex-witness Vernon. Scientology is a conservative body, and they support Trump collectively more so than they support liberal, Trump, Kamala, Harris, right? Waltz. I don't know that Scientology benefits under Trump. I don't see that. What I do see is that all of religion will benefit under Trump because of the Christian nationalist overreach that Trump represents. And we've talked about that at length. I'm not going to go into that in this answer. Just look up Project 2025 and my video on that. You'll know what I'm talking about, or my interviews with Clint Haycock. I have very strong views about Christian nationalism and evangelicism and dominionism and the extremity of the Christian right. Scientology would benefit from any laws that are passed by, in that direction. The anti-abortion laws are going to present real big problems for Scientologists, though, which is why I'm surprised that they are publicly the way that they are. But the Sea Org is going to manage and make it go right no matter what they need to do. And if they need to skip straight to vasectomies or something to enforce kids, no kids policy, then that's what they'll do. They'll adapt and they'll make it awful and horrible in the process. So not, but yeah, generally speaking, I think if Trump gets into office, Scientology would be more protected than not. Will they feel more protected? Yeah, as a religion. Yes, I think they will. And I think that's why they would, one of the many reasons why I think that they would support a Trump presidency. Okay, already asked that one. Young Matador, hey Chris, did you ever participate in community cleanup projects while in the Church of Scientology, similar to what we're seeing happening in Florida at the moment with the volunteers in yellow t-shirts? Yes, I did. I participated in a couple street cleanups when I was in Twin Cities. We did some street cleanups there, and I think there were one or two that I was part of in Los Angeles. So a couple times, yeah. Oh, okay, that's fine. Let's carry on here. Young Matador, have you ever read, watched anything regarding the Oxycontin sales pitch pushed out by the Sackler family? One whistleblower said the Purdue sales force was almost cult-like in how it pushed the drug. Yeah, this is what money can do to people. It corrupts absolutely, and money really went, oh man, did a bunch of people really just take a flying leap off the cliff with the Sacklers and stuff, with the Oxycontin and stuff. I have not watched the shows yet. I know there's Dope Sick, and there was another one that was made that Matthew Broderick was in about the Sacklers and the whole disgusting story of how Oxy was sort of pushed off on the world, fully knowing, right, that it was highly addictive and not good for people, right? And they did it anyway. And the Sackler family should all be in jail, basically. But, you know, whatever. That we don't get that kind of justice in this world. So, as it is, they're just going to have to do with not being invited to parties anymore, right? I mean, it's pretty sick how they got away with what they got away with. But you can get fads that get very culty, and when they are money motivated or driven, profit motivated, right, then people can get obsessive and weird and pushy and do all the same stuff that people do in cults, because they kind of revved up the same way, even if why they're revved up and how they got that way isn't really the same thing as what's going on in a cult. A sales force is not a cult. A sales force is a sales force. They are motivated to believe in their product because they're being paid to believe in it, and they are getting paid and bonuses for selling it. So they're very highly motivated people that can duplicate or look an awful lot like a cult, but it's different, right? Money motivation and belief, dogma motivation and coercive control are different things. So they can, you know, the Venn diagram can kind of overlap a bit, but they are not the same things. So that's what I'll say about that real fast, since we're doing our flash answers here. Miss Tara Green, do we all crave happiness deep down? And does true happiness lie in accepting change as inevitable rather than trying to fight it? Great questions. We crave, the experience of happiness is an experience of neurochemicals and other things making us feel euphoric, making us feel wonderful, happy, joyous, delighted. This is a chemical experience and a social experience at the same time. It's both of these two things, right? Happiness means so much more to us, I think. You'll agree with me. I hope you'll agree with me. When it is shared between people. Standing in a room all by yourself feeling really happy is a nice feeling, but having it recognized or acknowledged and participated in by other people is a more uplifting and delightful experience. I think that's true, which is why I say it's not just a chemical process, it's a social experience too. Certainly what we could call an emotional experience. We do crave that because our bodies feel wonderful when that's happening. Happiness is not a state that we should be in all the time any more than any other emotional state is, but it is something we crave because it feels so good. Does true happiness lie in accepting change as inevitable rather than trying to fight it? Yes. Yes, it does. The basic struggle between conservatism and progressivism, or progressive values and conservative values, is the struggle, the eternal struggle between change and staying static or solid or the same. And these two determinations or forces or intentions are constantly fighting one another, right? How much change is too much change or too little? What should we hold on to? What needs to be different? But this is a false conflict. It's an apparency, it's an illusion. It's not real. Because nothing in this universe, anywhere, stays the same. There is no such thing as staying the same. So the natural law The natural course of the universe is change. Everything is changing every second of every day, every moment. Things aren't the same as they were a moment ago. And so it's our needs to keep things the same, to keep things stable and secure. What do we mean by that? Predictable. We understand. What do we mean when we say we understand something? We can predict it. We know what's going to happen next. The change that's coming is predictable. We know where it's going to be. We know tomorrow that star is going to be in that position in the sky, not there or there or there or over there. It's going to be right where we know it's going to be. That's what that knowledge and all those hours and hours and hours of investment on the part of so many people over so many years to be able to tell us where it's going to be, right? I use that as a silly example of what we're all doing all the time. We're constantly trying to predict our environment and where things are going to be. And the challenge of our lives is that we are wrong most of the time, and we're constantly struggling to try to get ourselves right in our predictions. This is the entire purpose of this gray matter that exists in our head, is prediction and keeping us alive, and regulating our body and the systems of our body. That's the two things this device in our brain, called our brain, that's what it's doing. And so happiness, if happiness comes from successfully predicting the outcome of things, and it often does, not always, but it often is about that, then our happiness would rely upon our acknowledgement that shit's gonna change, right? One follows the other, and all of it builds to happiness and survival and moving forward through life, right? So that's my answer. There you go. Okay. Ooh, yeah, we're really going to have to wrap up here. Okay, so Joe DeSeppo, would someone living in the EU be able to take legal action against Scientology's central files to get info deleted? It's very illegal in the EU. Yes, Joe, I believe that somebody in the EU could do that. There was talk about that a few years ago with the JWs, actually, and the information they were keeping on people. And I think Scientology's very, very much should be under the microscope in the EU because of those transparency and data collection and identification laws. I don't know more than that about it because so much of my time has been directed on other aspects of cult research that I haven't dived into those laws as much as I want to. I'm going to say that I think next year is going to be kind of my year of law when it comes to the cults and how we deal with them legally. And I think I'm going to dive much deeper into this stuff next year because this year has just been so much on cult recovery and talking about that stuff. So I wish I could give you more, but I am sure that you are right that the law does protect people and that information Scientology has collected on them shouldn't be there, and that there is a case there. I think that's true. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Frank V asks, recently heard a podcast where an individual no longer part of the IAS, the International Association of Scientologists, still audits individuals with IHELP. Oh, with IHELP. How is that possible? Ooh. I don't know. The way you phrase that question is somebody left the IAS, but they are still officially auditing under the auspices of and direction of the Church of Scientology. IHELP, you mentioned in your question there, is the international, what is that? IHELP is International Hubbard Ecclesiastical League of Pastors. Oh, God, I can't believe I still remember all this stuff. So IHELP is the body of auditors that are not officially Scientology staff members, but are auditing out in the field. And they make money doing that, or they have to audit either for free, or they have to charge as much or more than the local orgs. That's the policy on it. Anyway, I don't know how somebody could resign from the IAS or no longer be officially a Scientologist and still be auditing under IHELP. Frank, you're going to have to, maybe if you email me and give me all the specifics of what you know about this, I might be able to make more sense of it, because the way you're asking me this question, I don't know how that's possible. So, but email me at askchrisshelton@gmail.com. Give me all the data on this, and maybe I can bring this up as another in another Q&A to address this more thoroughly. Oh, this is okay. All right. Flash answer here, so I'm not going to go deep. Why does the State Department run propaganda to cover for the actions of Israel? Blinken claimed Hamas don't want a ceasefire when Netanyahu is quoted to say that a permanent ceasefire is unacceptable. This is complicated, man, and I'm going to be really shallow in my answer right now and simply say that for whatever reason, and I'm not telling you when I say this that I agree with this position, and I'm not saying that I fully disagree with this position either. When it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there are very, very few right answers or even logical answers. It is a mess of a situation over there, and I have not seen such extreme brutality and violence perpetuated between two tribes of people, since World War II. It's horrifying what these groups are doing to each other, and I don't agree with either side as a blanket statement, okay? That being said, in terms of our government, the United States government has been, since the very beginning, Israel's ally. That's the position we have adopted, and we have funded them, and we have armed them, and we have taken the position that we are backing their play in that area of the world. There are many reasons for that, only a few of which I actually understand, but I know this is the case. So when we adopt positions like that, like any other government in the world, we support our allies and we denigrate our enemies and the enemies of our allies. That's the game at the international level. We don't do this because we think the leaders of these other countries are great people. We don't do this because we agree with the moral foundations of the leaders of these other countries. We do it because that nation gives us or is important to us for some very specific reason or reasons. And there's a laundry list of reasons why Israel is important to us as an ally. When you have an allyship with a nation, you take the bad with the good and you kind of front for it. And that's what we've been doing. Again, I'm not saying this answer because I think that we are right for doing this, and I'm not saying that I think we're wrong. I don't know. It's complicated and messy as hell. What I don't agree with is all the violence and the death and the killing over there. I don't agree with either side's positions on that. And so that's the sort of very kind of careful middle line I'm trying to take right now in answering this question. But when you have any of our allies are going to receive the brunt of our support, which means PR support, financial support, as well as military support. And the United States is the most powerful nation on this planet, period, end of story. That is just how it is. And so when we swing our sword and, rattle our saber for somebody, we go all in on it. And there's a lot of good reasons we have to do that. They're not all bad reasons, and it's not all about, hey, let's go kill babies. That's not just what's going on here. It's complicated. So that's as deep as I'm going to go right now. If you haven't seen, I think last year I did a critical clip or a critical cult news show. I was doing a news show for a little while, and at some point in the future I do want to bring that back. But I dedicated the entire last episode of that show to this conflict and the history of it and why I feel the way that I feel about it. And I recognize right now, and maybe I should have led with this, that there are very passionate views on both sides of this thing. Okay. And I don't want to get, you know, crushed by this thing, but it's nasty and horrible. And I just wish that these people could figure out a way to live in coexistence. That's at the end of the day, that's the only wish I really have about that entire situation. Okay. And I got to go. I have actually stretched myself over a bit. I wanted to see if I could answer more of these. I've still got about 7 or 8 here, but I've got to get going, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for coming around and listening to me blabber on at a mad rate about all of this. I always appreciate your viewership. Oh, looks like we lost a few people a bit ago, but that's fine. It is what it is. I'm sure you guys will catch it on the replay. All right, guys, just checking over real fast in the regular comment section here. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow on the Tony Show. And then I don't have any plans for any live streams during the week, but let's see what happens. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.